are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Urban One Incorporated, Radio One, or any of its subsidiary companies. Attorney Nathaniel Lee, a lawyer with credibility, success, and experience, representing people in hundreds of jury trials, Nathaniel Lee is who you want by your side in the courtroom. You've seen the rest, now hire the best. Contact Lee, Cosell, and Feigley today. And now, to address the legal concerns of the community, Praise AM 1310, 95.1 FM presents Legally Speaking. Here are today's hosts.
Good morning, everyone. This is Nathaniel Lee. Thank you for joining us once again. And I want to remind everybody, I forgot to announce this on prior show. Our live call-in number is 833-653-3529. I'll announce it a few times during the show. We're just blessed to have a full complement of superstar legal minds, some of the best on the planet, with attorney Vanita Banks, cybersecurity expert, master's in tax, just a big-time research analyst, Milton Grimes, the famous Rodney King attorney. But actually, his best job may have been on a murder case in Illinois. And then we have Marlon Primes. He was the Department of Justice. It's changed a lot since Marlon left. And so hopefully they regain their posture at some point in the future. But today, there's so many legal issues that are facing us. It's difficult to start, but I'm going to start with the gentleman outside of Kroger who hit me up about the Civil Rights Act. Real quickly, folks, the 13th Amendment was abolished slavery. That was in 1865. The 14th Amendment, however, was not done until 1868. Now, the reason that's important is that it granted citizenship to all of the slaves. And so these laws that we've seen now been eviscerated was to correct a profound injustice in the American system. And we see now there's a significant rollback. And that's kind of where we start. And the problem that we're faced is that many people argue that democracy in America didn't start until about 1965. Now, why is that important? The 24th Amendment was passed in 1964, and that prohibited the use of poll tax in federal election. It removed the financial barrier used by the southern states to keep Black citizens from voting. In 1964 also, the landmark legislation, the Civil Rights Act, it banned segregation in public accommodation. But before the show started, Attorney Banks sent me information, and it's kind of the sign of the time. It's about Duke University. Go ahead, Attorney Banks. Why is that such an important situation at Duke Law School? Luber?
Yeah, I think you may have lost Vanita. Yeah, Nathaniel, one of the things about the situation with Duke Law School, and good morning to your audience, good morning to everyone, is that there has been a drag-out fight as it relates to the issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the administration has gone to a number of universities, including Harvard and UCLA, and threatened and then did withhold funds because of allegations that those schools did not abandon their DEI programs. Harvard fought, got an order that these funds could not be frozen, the same with UCLA. And now the Department of Justice is on the same track with Duke University and saying that they have a program that is illegal DEI in their view. And their sin is that they're, and this is according to Duke publications and other publications in the media, is that they had on their application asked the students, hey, what impact would your admission have on the goals as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion? And that appears to be permissible even in light of the U.S. Supreme Court's recent decision. And your audience should know, Nathaniel, that yielded 15 students out of African American out of 227, which is like 7% of the population, of the African American population. But there's just an overall, assault on these schools that are trying to provide equal opportunity. Because the reality of it is, as many of us know that have been practicing, you're not going to be effective as a lawyer unless you understand how to deal with people from different walks of life, whether it be based on color, whether it be based on class. Those are important things. And you certainly don't want to, get into the managerial trials that you've had, Nathaniel and Milton, where you're expert on the law, but you're tone deaf on cultural issues. You may say something that's going to turn people off, and you're not going to be effective as an advocate. So I hope that Duke University fights this process, and we'll just have to see how this develops.
Vanita.
Morning.
Morning.
I'm back, and Harvard won their case, if you will, and those universities and law firms that have pushed back on these illegal and unconstitutional actions, many of them in the form of executive orders, those institutions have won their challenges in court. And many of us have spent our careers advocating for diversity, equity, and inclusion in the legal profession as well as in the corporate workplace. And those policies are intended to ensure fair and equitable representation, and that those groups that historically had not had an opportunity to pursue careers in law and corporate and federal contracts, for example, had an opportunity to pursue those careers and opportunities. And we also have, there's statistical evidence that stands for the proposition that those corporations specifically that embrace the principles and frameworks of diversity, equity, and inclusion are more profitable than those companies that don't embrace those policies and ideology.
This week's reading of the newspaper, just coincidentally, there were some articles in there about the number of corporations, major corporations, that have joined this excluding the requirement of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Some of the major corporations have now taken away the requirement of its boards being integrated or diversified, of having women on the board, a certain percentage of women or a certain percentage of minorities on boards. Those are all sliding away real quietly in our major corporations across this nation. So we're going to see the effect of that change in decision making in these corporations now and in the future is what's happening.
Yeah, what's going to be interesting too is that there are many opponents of affirmative action and diversity, equity, inclusion. And I think the important question, Nathaniel, that your audience needs to ask themselves is that, hey, prior to the 1964 Civil Rights Act, if you look at the composition of these law schools, of these universities, medical schools, they are predominantly, overwhelmingly white male. And, the Civil Rights Act and a lot of these diversity efforts were to change that dynamic. And, when we have these discussions about DEI, what is the alternative? Do we want to go back to those dark days where you weren't giving everyone at least an opportunity to get a seat at the table, not guaranteeing them a seat, but giving them the opportunity and casting a wide net to make sure that you're inclusive? I tell this story all the time, and I told it on this show of my aunt who her parents paid taxes in Georgia, where you went to school, Nathaniel, and she got good grades, but she grew up in the 50s. She was in college in the 50s. And the state of Georgia, because of their anti-DEI policies at that time, said, hey, we will pay for you to go to a northern university. You cannot go to the University of Georgia. And, so we got less. And, these efforts are to remedy those past effects. And if we're not careful, we'll go back to those pictures that you'll see at a lot of law schools and universities where the only people are included are one classification. And it cannot be that God only gave, blessings of intellect to a small, section of our society. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, if all I'm getting are white males, hey, perhaps I need to do a better job in terms of casting a wider net to make sure that I have a diverse student body that's representative of the community that we serve.
And we know that law as well as medicine, but I can speak directly to law, as one of the least diverse professions. And in as you look at globalization, technology, and the unbundling of legal services, we know that diversity is a strength and that it is good for business. And as I stated, those companies that embrace diversity are more profitable, and the statistics bear that out. Also, when you look at the composition of lawyers of color, and specifically Black lawyers in major law firms. This is prior to the attack and assault on diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. There wasn't critical mass and nowhere close to it prior to the attack. And what we're seeing and predicted to see is that there will be even less representation as we move forward if these anti-diversity, equity, inclusion policies are allowed to continue moving forward. And my suggestion with respect to Attorney Grimes' point with respect to corporations that are reversing their DEI policies and removing them from requirements for board membership and their employment policies is that we can address those issues through our multi-trillion dollar spending power and determining who those organizations are and making decisions regarding who we're going to spend our dollars with.
Here's why we start off talking about the lawyers. This is important, audience, why you need to understand this. It was first coined in a play by William Shakespeare in Henry VI, Part 2. And the phrase was, the first thing we do, let's kill all the lawyers. Now, why was that phrase so profound and so relevant today in American history? The reason this is so relevant, folks, and why we're harping on this thing about this admission to law school. What many scholars said Shakespeare action meant, it was a compliment to lawyers in the sense that if you get rid of the lawyers, you clear the path for absolute lawlessness, tyranny, and the rights and legal protection for people in society. So if we eliminate the possibility of African Americans to attend law schools, what barriers would we have left for the protections of our rights if that part of the society is ignored? And that's why it's so important. And that's why we harp on these type of things each week, because we must have this. Today now, we in our state, for example, we have our Attorney General sent out a notice to all law firms, you can't have the diversity, equity, and inclusion. In our state, less than 1% of these contracts go to Black lawyers, if we got 1%. So what he's saying is that we have 0%. And so that's why it's so important you understand that this is a critical issue that we're dealing with now, because this democracy, I start off, only really started around 1965. So we're not been in a real democracy for very long in this country. Go ahead.
If we don't have African-American lawyers or African-Americans participated in all levels of the justice system, we are going to be facing hell again. We're going to be facing discriminatory laws. We're going to be facing discriminatory treatment in arrests, trials, and sentencing. I mean, the state of Washington recognized to such a degree the fact that they had found racist decisions in their cases over history that back in 2020, the Supreme Court in the state of Washington decided we're going to review all of our cases the last 100 or so years, and we're going to go in and rectify some of those decisions because they were racist decisions. And a few other states across the nation has done something similar to that. So there's a recognition of the fact that I believe, without color representation in our justice system, we don't have a chance of getting fairness in the courtroom. I've seen that in trials in my own experience, how judges and prosecutors and even some defense lawyers who are not of the same ethnic identification as the defendants in the criminal court system. It's terrible.
African American lawyers make up approximately 5% of all lawyers in the United States, roughly 65 to 70 thousand lawyers, and that number has remained pretty much unchanged over the last 10 years. And that representation is low as compared to the overall US population, where Black people make up roughly almost 14% or 13.7% of the total population. And so diversity, DEI initiatives are intended to ensure, again, that qualified individuals have the opportunity to practice law, because the profession should mirror the population that it serves.
Right.
So when you have only 5% of Black lawyers in the United States with a population of 13%, certainly that's going to result in the types of inequities that Attorney Grimes has referenced.
It's a must. It's a must, y'all. It is not an option. We have got to reach a higher level of African Americans involved in this justice system, criminal and civil, from the bench on down to the courtroom clerk. It's a must.
Well, I will
Go ahead.
go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I was hoping that Duke University fight this attack. And Marlon, what I don't understand about the current Justice Department, how do they justify abandoning the Civil Rights Division and changing is in such a radical different direction in terms of the rights of African Americans and civil rights? Some of the most famous cases in American history was prosecuted by the Justice Department. Even Milton's case, Rodney Luther King, they had a successful prosecution after the state punted on it.
After the state bungled the job, and I can cite the bungling incidents if y'all want to show you that the state prosecutors did not come close to doing a thorough job of prosecuting. They didn't put King on the stand. They did not fight against the change of venue to a locale where it was known for a retirement community of police officers across the state. They didn't oppose that. I mean, the prosecutors, I got the discovery on the case and I said, where is the tape of Rodney King's interview 22 hours after he was beaten, which is the same day, 11 o'clock that night. And they said, we don't have such a tape. I said, yes, you do. It's in a report. They fumbled through the report. Oh, yeah, here it is. Oh, here's an envelope that we didn't open. And there was a 52-minute interview of Rodney King by Internal Affairs the day that he was beaten. You follow me? So the prosecutions are really lightweight in a lot of these cases. It's a pretense or a sham prosecution, in my honest opinion, Marlon. I hate to say that, but that's what I've experienced. That's what I've seen in more than one case. It's like, put our weakest prosecutors on the case, put our most incompetent prosecutors on the case. So we got to have representation. I'm sorry.
That wasn't Marlon. Go ahead, Marlon.
No, that wasn't me. I think that was a caller, I thought. But no, I think that you're right. I mean, the DOJ Civil Rights Division for years has been known as the crown jewel of the Department of Justice. And you're right. There are so many famous decisions where the DOJ Civil Rights Division came to the rescue. If you look at the Little Rock Nine, integrating the schoolhouse, you had DOJ lawyers that were there. And then the case that Milton, mentions as well in terms of Rodney King, after the bundled state prosecution, the U.S. Attorney's Office came in and, filed a suit and got a conviction. So I think it just kind of reinforces that voting makes a difference.
Yes.
And now we have, it even makes a greater difference. Now the Supreme Court is giving more power to the executives. And now you have Todd Blanche, who has been confirmed as the Attorney General of the United States. And it seems as though there's not a dichotomy where there once was between the president and the Department of Justice. There's a great story from President Obama's U.S. attorneys who basically indicated that when they were appointed by the president, they said they were all invited to the White House. They say President Obama came out to greet everyone. And he says, although I had a role in appointing you, and then you had to be confirmed by the Senate, you are not my lawyer. You represent the people of the United States. And what's problematic is that this Justice Department, this new iteration, doesn't understand that very important lesson. You are not the president's lawyer. You represent the United States and everyone in the United States. And that's why we're having so many issues right now, because you have prosecutors that are understanding that. There's no way that you should have a president of the United States come and address employees of the Department of Justice and make the statements that were made and make people appear not as President Obama had said that, hey, you represent the people, but intimating that you represent his particular interests. So it's really problematic, and I think it's something that really needs to be at the forefront of the campaign for election during the midterm and going forward.
Well, let's, Imhotep, you had a question or comment for us today, sir. Go ahead. And for all our other listeners, our call-in number is 833-653-3529. Go ahead.
Good morning.
Sir.
Good morning. Good morning. All right. Good morning. Thank you for taking my call. Good morning, everyone. You all. I tell you, they don't get this show in other cities. I've been a lot of places. You may see in LA, maybe in Atlanta, New York, we may get a few. We're appreciative. We're appreciative of you all, and thank you. But just a couple of things I want to throw out there, you all. And the first thing is that Attorney Prime just talked about the Justice Department not working for the president. Well, it seems like none of those departments want to work for the people, period. Talking about working for, the United States and for the people, prosecuting the crimes, for the United States against the people, per se. Think about this. We've just had a massive storm again in the Northwest Indiana, Chicagoland area. Attorney Banks, I'm sure, witnessed. My mother, it's destruction all through Gary, Hammond, Chicago got hit somewhat, Portage, Maryville. It's just total destruction. This is the second time this year. It happened again the end of April. Remember, it happened, Attorney Banks, it happened in April, okay? Neither time, me and my mother discussed this, we're barely getting power on. Braun has gone up there. We talk about federalism. See, civics is such important, but and I'm not going to harp on the education system. I think we just got to help. All of us just got to do better in teaching our people. But when we talk about federalism, okay, Braun went up there. He declared it a disaster. So I read the headline this morning on THR 13 site here, local news here, everyone. And Braun is asking the president to declare it a federal disaster. Okay, that's important because the money, once you do that, then you free up the money. FEMA comes in, everything like that, and we can get more power. We can get these trees removed. We can get the people back, get some semblance, and then free up some money. Well, here we go. We have a president who has purposely stated, when I was out in L.A. Last year, Milton, last June of 25, I drove all the way up Pacific Coast Highway, and I drove through the areas where the fires happened. You can see remnants and condos that was burnt right off Pacific Coast Highway. Burnt cars still there. He hadn't sent the money. They hadn't still gotten the money, and that's what the problem is now. He's saying he's not going to.
For him, you don't get the money.
That's exactly what he said. If you haven't voted for him, you can't get the money. This is preposterous. The leader of FEMA, who's his lackey, is supposed to work for the American people. You're not saving no money. I get tired of them acting like they saving taxpayers' money. You ain't saving no money when you want 100 and something billion for an unjust war. That money is for disasters. It's if I wasn't had some things to do with my youngest child at school and then this weekend, I'd have been went up there to see what's happening because I hear you can barely get into Gary anyway. Okay, period. But it's destruction up there. So Braun is begging him to make it a federal disaster to free up these funds. But you're right. He hold money from California, Colorado, anywhere that he figures you didn't vote for him. It is really terrible what we have. It's really terrible, this administration we got going on. And Bob or whoever, if you're listening, that's why we don't like who he is and who we have. Even Bush, which we criticized thoroughly for what happened with Katrina, eventually things did come in, but we had destruction for tornadoes and hurricanes his first time around, where he started throwing paper towels to the people in Puerto Rico and things like that. This federalism is, I'm asking you all, this is a question. Is federalism dead right now? Is federalism dead?
Well,
and I'll take your answer.
One second, let me tell you. Hey, Imhotep, here's something that is very salient to this whole argument, the thing you're bringing forth. The weather forecast may be a simple function, right? So we were told today that it'd be sunshine by 10 o'clock. At 10 o'clock is raining. So we have a dysfunctional government. So the protection that we had to prepare for disasters, hurricane, tornado, adverse rain condition, we don't have that protection now. I mean, the scientists are not part of the process. They got rid of them. And so you can't get a simple, good weather forecast anymore. And so
I think you're right, Nick, because they didn't get a warning up there. My mother said they didn't get a warning.
Well, that's the problem. When you have, we lost the scientists, you know, I don't know whether anybody followed that.
15,000. 15,000 scientists have gone. They're left. They've left.
You know,
15,000.
so now we have people predicting the weather, and every weather forecast we're getting almost, we'll be lucky to get 25% right anymore. You know, I expect it to be sunshine at 10, golf at 12. It ain't gonna happen. You know, it's been raining. I'm thinking even before you could get a forecast 7 days, now you can't even get it within an hour accurate. It's just pathetic. And that's part of the problem we're experiencing. So we've had a lot of adverse weather condition. And so before you get to the inadequate FEMA response, even the protection to know how to avoid some of the adverse consequences. Now, you know, we're going to get into hurricane season, the same things will occur, you know, and so that's a bigger problem. And it's based on the fact that we got to get out and vote like we never did before.
Absolutely.
And thank you.
We've seen agencies, including FEMA, being dismantled, and the refusal of needed funds to be disseminated to the states. I mean, this again is illegal. It's not constitutional. And this is why, you know, and I know we've said in many prior elections that you have to vote as though your life depends on it. That is so true. It's never been more true than with respect to these midterm elections. And I wanted to go back to, there's a comment in the chat regarding the American Bar Association and its policies with respect to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And during its annual meeting in Chicago on August 4th, as a result of, there was a resolution to end diversity, equity, and inclusion in law school admissions. And I wanted to just shout out that our National Bar Association board member and California Association of Black Lawyers president, Terrence Evans, he spoke in opposition to the resolution that was before the ABA House of Delegates, and that resolution was defeated, at least for now.
It's going across the board, though, Benita. I mean, they're changing the enrollment requirements in the California educational system. They're going back to wanting the standardized test as part of the requirement for enrollment. They're no longer looking at trying to balance out the race issue here in our educational systems. It's going backwards. I don't know what we are going to do. I don't see any great protests about this. Yeah, we're talking about it, but I don't see like back in the 60s and the 70s when we were in the streets about this stuff. I read yesterday's headline, and the headline was the wealthy and the rich are leaving this country. They say because there is a feeling of no lack of safety, and they just don't trust the balance in the government now. So this is a more serious problem, I think, than what we are addressing.
Well, Milton, when I grew up, the schools, I grew up in a segregated school system down in South Florida. My school system did not attempt to desegregate until about 1969. Okay. And so I attended all black schools. At some point in 1969, we were bused to the white school. In response, about 80% of the white kids left the white school, and they went and started their own school because their parents did not want their kids to be in the classroom with black students. Right. And so we have a relatively short history that we're dealing with.
Yeah. Some of us are still alive from that time. You know, we
Yeah,
not.
but it's not that far. It's not that far that these things occurred. We would get older textbooks and stuff. So we're seeing the rights being abrogated right before our eyes, and there's not a big public outcry a lot of time by these rules, particularly in our state here in Indiana, when the Attorney General sends out a threatening letter. And, it's almost like they want to say that we want to go back to segregation because that made certain people feel good about themselves. Forget about the economic aspect, they're poor as hell. We think that no matter how bad I am economically, so long as I'm a certain race or something, I'm better than that race and I'm okay with that. And so I think it's a sad commentary in our system. And so these issues are so important until we have to stop this trend this year. We don't see the mass protests. I saw in the street of Benita, Marlon, Milton, they were saying no kings. They did that everywhere. But there was not the same response to this eradication of diversity and inclusion or affirmative action. I just didn't see that.
Right.
I mean, we have to do a better job. We have to do a better job in terms of making the case. I think that conservatives have, really saturated media and making people believe that diversity, equity, inclusion is something bad or that affirmative action is for unqualified people. So there's been so much that you'll hear in the mainstream media as well as the more conservative media, and I think that we all need to do a better job of really educating people in our community that hey, it is a fact today. There have been many studies where you'll take the same people, one black, one white, they'll have the same qualifications. One will get job interviews, the other will not. And so, and then you look at the fact that in Washington, D.C. and some other major areas, we have a disparate number of African American women that have been displaced. So we have to really, do a better job in terms of advocating that, hey, this is why these programs are necessary. And if you look historically, that's why a lot of these federal agencies, the Postal Service, for years it was, people that couldn't get jobs at other places. And when Lyndon Baines Johnson, opened up the federal government to ensure that African Americans got a fair chance, we had more African Americans getting opportunities, and it really started the private sector to kind of follow suit. So I think we really do have to make the case. We have to really combat all the propaganda that we're getting in the mainstream and conservative media to really help people understand that, hey, what are the alternatives, and we don't want to return to where we were before.
We have a caller, Guy.
Yes. Good morning.
Morning.
Just wanted to say that what the subject is today is kind of like an ongoing subject, but it does have to be addressed. So you have to keep addressing it. As an example, in the 40s, my father and perhaps your parents also were subjugated to outright discrimination in terms of hiring. Here in Indianapolis, there's a plant called Allison and a division of General Motors. And my father had a degree from Indiana University, for instance, and he could only be a janitor at that company or a parts washer, and there were others in the same situation. Fast forward 1964, when I was hired at the same company in the engineering department. So there has been progress, I guess, not to the extent it could be, but we still face other forms of subtle discrimination now. And I think, weirdly enough, this whole push toward elimination of affirmative action, DEI, whatever we want to call it, it has been successful, even though it wasn't all it was advertised to be, because there were other groups included in that affirmative action or whatever, and sometimes these other groups were favored over the Black community, which was the target initially. Also, I'd like to say that we are fighting back to a certain extent when you have things like boycotts, which you might remember. Recent one was the Target company by Reverend Jamal Bryant, which was had some degree of success. So there are actions against what is happening, but I think it's important to look at the whole picture in terms of human condition, because when you take one group and they are told that, well, we have to make up for history, eventually that's only going to go so far. So I think that's what is happening today. And then also I think you have to look at the fact that we have had success to a certain extent, and that might be why there hasn't been such an outcry as it was earlier. Also, I would like to say that
make it quick.
We are initiating an effort in Indianapolis and hopefully around the country to deal with the election coming up on November the 3rd, the midterm elections. In 2022, the midterm elections in Indiana showed 37.2% of eligible voters actually voted. We can't allow that to happen again. This time, this election is too consequential coming up on November the 3rd. So we are starting as a goal to improve that 37.2%, number one. And we're calling it foolproof vote for sure. In other words, we're trying to kind of nip it in the bud, so to speak, make sure that everybody knows that they can vote if they're eligible. If they will be 18 years of age by November the 3rd, they can vote. Also, people that have changed their names, you need to contact your election board and voter registration board to get that straight ahead of time. Also, there are rumors that our current administration is going to try to intimidate voters by using the National Guard or police agencies to intimidate people at the polls. And you're familiar, I'm sure, with the so-called Save America Act that the president is pushing very hard, which requires stringent voter registration requirements. You have to have a passport, you have to have a birth certificate, on and on and on. But anyway, we're trying to nip it in the bud, and it's called foolproof, vote for sure, and hopefully we can achieve our goal of improving the 37.2% of eligible voters.
Okay, thank you very much. Next caller, go ahead. Hello?
And hopefully we can achieve our goal of improving the 37.2% of eligible voters.
Caller, you're on the line. Pierre?
That's Guy.
No, Pierre, go ahead.
This Pierre. It helps to talk to people that are in the fight. The federal government has just essentially been shut down by Donald Trump. For example, I've already filed an unfair labor practice with our National Labor Relations Board. Unless it's a union going against a company or whatever, they're unassigning these cases under the guise that, oh, we were overwhelmed and we were shut down during the shutdown and we're so behind. So you file an unfair labor practice, and all the local National Labor Relations Board is going to do is they're going to leave that case unassigned, I guess, till they can get to it, and they're never going to get to it. So I feel like it's a violation of my rights. They're doing that now. Our local National Labor Relations Board, Region 25, is doing that. Then you go to the courts. Now, some of you guys know that I had an age discrimination court case in the federal courts here in Indianapolis. And right now I'm waiting for the Seventh Circuit to see if they'll let me proceed without payment. Here's the thing I want you to know about that case. It appears that the new judge that I got in my case, on that case, who actually dismissed my case for lack of prosecution, and there's a reason why I wasn't complying with that discovery, it appears that he knew about my case before he was confirmed. And they were just waiting for him to get confirmed to take over my case. That's what it appears to be. Stuff is outrageous. So the federal government under Donald Trump has essentially just been shut down when it comes to pursuing justice for race discrimination or unfair labor practices. That's what's going on in the country. There are no news stories on this. There has been on the EEOC's efforts to support white men and stuff like that. But these other things going on with the federal government, this stuff is not getting any news play. But I wanted Milton to get back to the Daniel Flores case out there, where they're prosecuting the whistleblower for recording the racist statements and cops. And I've been reading up on that and keeping apprised of that. But when you have a president that sends out the message that, we're going after people who are pursuing rights and stuff like this, it's a dark day in America, and it's our own fault because we didn't go out and do what we were supposed to do.
Okay, thank you. Hey, real quickly, Marlon, about the Justice Department, give us a quick overview of the Civil Rights Division, what has happened to it, because I think it's irrelevant at this time. Go ahead.
Yeah, so they've really flipped their mission on its head. And, essentially what happens at the Department of Justice, when there's a statute passed, you have a division that's created to enforce that. So, for example, you have when the American with Disabilities Act was passed, they have an ADA section, and the same thing with the Civil Rights Act and the, crown jewels of the civil rights, period, with the 64 Civil Rights Acts, 68 Housing Discrimination Act. So what's really happened right now is they've totally shifted their priorities. Instead of being in favor of African Americans that are being discriminated against, they have clearly, the Department of Justice indicated that priorities are different, that they are going to attack companies such as that Milton mentioned that have DEI programs. And they are championing reverse discrimination cases. So these are the things at their forefront. The other thing that's really Nathaniel, I know you've worked on, and also Milton has worked on, is that if you remember, your audience, that under President Obama and even under President Biden, there were a number of consent decrees with police departments. Because there was, clear allegations and evidence that there wasn't constitutional policing. And the police departments entered into what's known as consent decrees, and they basically said, hey, we're going to take these steps to ensure that we're acting in an appropriate manner. So what the DOJ Civil Rights Division is doing across the board is they're trying to get out from under those agreements. So it's really flipping things on its head. said. And this kind of really goes back to what you've said and what others have said, that a lot of times, people don't understand the impact of their vote. And this is really exhibit A, B, and C, that your vote really makes a difference. There is a difference in terms of the approach of the Obama Department of Justice, the Biden Department of Justice, compared to what we're seeing right now. So I think it's also important, in that vein, to indicate that, hey, this is important. And that whoever, is the running for president, hey, this is something that's going to be important in terms of us getting their, they want our vote.
Hey, Milton, can you respond to the question he asked about?
It is a serious consideration that he's bringing up regarding who's the bad guy, who's the good guy. The bad guy now is being made out by the prosecutor, our new prosecutor, to be a young officer who recorded over a period of months 90-some conversations or statements made by the recruiters, the officers involved and responsible for selecting candidates to go to the police academy to be police officers here. He's heard racist, sexist, statements by these people. And he thought he was doing a public service in recording them. So now we have the question of whether or not he violated a law requiring you to notify another person that they're being tape recorded, unless you believe this person is about to commit a crime or is talking about committing a crime. He felt that they were going to affect the quality of not the quality of our officers, but their credibility was tainted by them expressing this racism and hype, fear of homosexuality, etc. So they're prosecuting this young man, but nobody said anything about doing something to these officers who were making these comments, which showed that they were not unbiased and objective. So it really is I won't say it's a shame, but it damn sure is something that draws your attention to who is the prosecutor's office, the DA's office, responsible for protecting.
Is that the local prosecutor's office or the federal government?
Yeah, that's the new prosecutor, Hodgman. Yeah, here in LA. He's prosecuting this officer. They've charged him with violating the rights of the people who he recorded.
When does this guy come up for
he won the election in November, this past November. He's a new prosecutor, but he's to the left. I mean, he's to the right. He's way to the right. And seems he's protecting the police department and he's protecting these racist, homophobic officers.
Could they do a recall petition on him?
Oh, you could do a recall, but that's not even in the question right now. He's doing a lot of things that the right side of our political brain is supporting.
It sounds like to me, though, he's going off the rail.
Well, they think that I guess the invading the privacy of these officers is more important than protecting the public.
See, we have situations like that here in Indianapolis, for example. We had a police officer that I contend wrongfully killed an unarmed suspect. And the police officer, he's so traumatized for killing someone that now he's on medical disability and he get a pension for his disability for PTSD for killing somebody. And so, so that means that our mayor and the administration supports that. That's here in Indianapolis. And I think it's a travesty. And so when you see that situation occur like that, then you're given tacit approval of what is gross misconduct.
That case that I mentioned to Marvin that took place in his city in Cleveland, called the 137 shots, where this judge said the officer who jumped on the hood of the dead people's car and shot 30 some times through the windshield and reloaded and shot some more, that he was scared.
Yeah,
Am I right
that is
about
a
it?
tragic case, and one of the reasons why we had the consent decree that I spoke about earlier in the city of Cleveland that DOJ now is trying to eradicate. But go ahead.
Yeah, but that's what's happening. They are protected by our justice system on a whole too many times. And these officers know this. That's what's happening with the ICE officers. They're not being trained, they're not being screened, they're not being vetted. They come in, they got a gun on their hip, and they know how to shoot it. Next.
Sad. What were you saying, Marlon?
No, I was done with my comment. I was just basically, echoing, what you and Milton were saying. And he mentioned the 137 shot case that was in Cleveland. I was just basically indicating that is one of many reasons why there was a consent decree in the city of Cleveland with the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. In fact, the Attorney General came to Cleveland to announce that consent decree. And now what we're seeing around the country are efforts by the DOJ Civil Rights Division to get out of those particular agreements. So, those are something that we should be concerned about.
Hmm.
The final comment on this, I forgot to mention the Voting Rights Act of 1965 outlawed discriminatory voting practices adopted by a lot of states, such as literacy tests. It established voter oversight to help prevent voter suppression. And we hit on that briefly at the beginning of the show. It seems like that we're making a radical turn to now engage in a process to act as a barrier for voter protection. It seems like the direction we're headed now is that the federal government is actively seeking methods to prevent people from voting. I know one of our callers talked about this very briefly, but it seems like we're headed in that direction now.
Yep.
So, what can we do to show our outrage and concerns? I put in the chat that the March on Washington 2026 Defend the Vote will take place on Friday, August 28th of this year at 9 o'clock at the Lincoln Memorial and National Mall in Washington, D.C. And this march will commemorate the 63rd anniversary of the historic 1963 March on Washington, where over 250,000 people gathered at the National Mall, where Dr. King delivered his famous I Have a Dream speech. And so the whole purpose of this march on August 28th is to defend voting rights, to oppose these rollbacks to civil rights and diversity programs, and to demand economic justice, fair wages, housing, and health care. And so hopefully we can convene at least, if not more than, 250,000 citizens in Washington, D.C. on August 28th.
If the Justice Department don't declare that a crime scene and prevent people from walking on the crime scene, you might be able to have that protest march. I mean,
Well, presumably the permit will have been obtained.
well, they can renege the, I mean, I'm trying to be funny.
No, understood, Attorney Grimes. You're absolutely right about that.
Well, thank you everyone for our callers and our superstar panel. We're going to continue to tackle these tough issues, particularly this is an election year, and we're going to try to keep the theme going and try to deal with these issues. Until next week, don't forget, call your neighbors, call your friends, make sure you get properly registered to vote in this